So today's webinar is about the latest state of climate change negotiations, reflections on what it means for Africa. Thank you for joining. So we have 3 sessions. The opening session, we have opening remarks from the Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency Global Support Program representative, that is Ms. Kisiwe Kumalo. And then I will be also moderating the session, and then we shall run the Menti in the first session and also take a group photo. And then the second session, we shall have our speakers who are representing the climate change negotiators for Africa, that is Mr. Frederick Ouma and Mr. Yamikani Idris from Malawi. And they will be taking us through the different topics, and I hope they are already part of the meeting. And then the last session will be on the exchange among countries, but also if there are any questions and answers, we shall allow that kind of deliberation during that session, and then we shall run the last part of Mentimeter and wrap up the session. Thank you so much. So I would like to hand over the next part of this session to Ms. Kisiwe for welcome remarks. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and welcome to everyone to this webinar. And as Sheila has mentioned, my name is Kisiwe Kumalo. I'm working here with the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center as a transparency officer under the CBIT GSP program. So the CBIT GSP project, briefly, is a transparency project that is funded by the GEF and implemented by UNEP, and UNEP CCC is the executing entity of this project. And this project is basically aiming at supporting all developing countries as they transition to their enhanced transparency framework. And as you know that it is now crunch time for most of the countries, that the BTRs are due in December 2024. So this is a very important time for countries. And the project is here to support you. And we have several modalities that we support countries. But our main trust is through the 10 regional networks that we have under the project. And the Anglophone Africa network is one of our networks that we work through and support countries from the English-speaking section of Africa. So we have been supporting countries through direct support countries. They can express their needs in terms of how they want us to support them as they prepare their BTRs. And we also have webinars and regional workshops. And this is basically all part of the package in terms of how we are trying to service the different countries to ensure that countries are meeting their obligations under the Paris Agreement. And this is very, very important for us. And we work based on the needs of the different countries. And we are very happy today to welcome you in this special webinar where we are reflecting a little bit on the climate change negotiations on transparency. As you know that the negotiations is a very important space and platform where countries come together, and this is where the decisions are made. This is where the guidance is made to inform countries in terms of how things are supposed to be done in the different thematic areas of climate change response. And we know that the negotiations have concluded a few years ago, the modalities and procedures on how countries are supposed to prepare their BTR. But the discussions haven't stopped there. There is quite a lot that is going on in the discussions, especially looking at how to ensure that support is getting to the countries the way they need it, how countries can express what are the challenges that countries actually have, and how can the whole globe collectively support countries in ensuring that the transparency framework of the Paris Agreement is strong through transparent reporting. As we know that this element is actually very much linked to the global stocktake, which is actually looking at how countries can enhance ambition. But what is also very important for us is how to ensure that countries are actually establishing sustainable modalities and mechanisms at a national level to ensure that they are not overburdened by this reporting mechanism, but we are building a system that is actually ensuring that countries are confident and they are able to inform and influence policy through transparency work that they are doing. So for us, this is quite a very important phase for countries, and we would be happy to support countries. Just reach out to us. You know, Sheila is our direct point of contact in the region, and you can also actually talk directly to us, the secretariat, the project team here in Copenhagen. So we are happy to actually support you in any way possible. So welcome to today's webinar. And we are happy to have our esteemed negotiators who are just going to give us a sneak peek in terms of what is going on in the negotiations and how can we prepare ourselves ready. And I want to mention this, that this is not only just a conversation that has to be done by the negotiators. I think practitioners, people who are working in the climate transparency space, have actually a lot to offer and share with the negotiators in terms of how they can influence actually decisions in the negotiation by informing the decision with practical experiences. Because if you don't have the practical experience, whatever architecture that is being formed at a global level may not be able to meet the needs of the countries on the ground. So it's very important that this is informed by practical experience, and we see together collectively how we maneuver some of the challenges and the needs that countries have. So with that, Sheila and colleagues, I will want to wish us happy discussions and hope that we are all going to engage and participate in this discourse that we are going to have here today. Thank you very much, Sheila. Over.
Thank you so much for those opening remarks. I would like to take this opportunity to ask members to put up to switch on their cameras so that you can take a photo before we can go into the Mentimeter. First session of the Mentimeter, kindly switch on your cameras so that we are able to take the photo. I can see some cameras are on, but we cannot see people. So I'm taking the first photo. I now see more people. Then I'll take the second one. Thank you for this. So I will now share my screen so that we can go through the Menti questions. So the code for the Menti, I hope you can see it on the screen, but I'm also sharing the link in the chat. So I hope you have already got the code. So the first question is, where are you joining us from today? Would love to know where you're located. Like to know where you're located. We can see someone from South Africa. Like to know where you are located. I have put a link in the chat. Would like to know where you are located. We are not seeing, only one person has been able to log on the Mentimeter. Kindly help us. The code is 26105543. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Kindly go to the menti.com and yes, you can see someone else from maybe Lesotho. Yes, West Africa is well represented. The eastern part of Africa, Eritrea, is represented. Thank you for joining us. Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us from the Seychelles and Mauritius. Thank you. Yes, our next slide is asking, what are your reflections on negotiations for transparency? I would want to understand what are your reflections on negotiations for transparency. Kindly share with us what you think. Thank you. What do you think about negotiations for transparency? Okay, someone says they have no idea. Yes, someone says they have not participated in the negotiations, and I think that's why today's session is very relevant. Yes, support for transparency is slow. I think we shall get from the key negotiators for Africa. They will be telling us maybe how we can make it stronger. Yes, someone is saying it's very challenging. I think this webinar is very interesting. We shall be able to learn to see how the negotiations can support our transparency efforts. Yes, someone says that they need to take part in the next negotiation. That is interesting. Yes. Wow. These are very interesting reflections. Yes, requirements are a bit stringent, so support is needed, challenging, and there's a need for capacity. Then GHG emissions reporting, global goal on adaptation and communication. We don't have money to attend the negotiations. These are good reflections. Yes, someone says it's difficult to get consensus. Wow, these are very good reflections, considering that we are going to hear from the lead negotiators for Africa. And I hope that as we get from their insights, we shall learn more and see how we can maybe mitigate some of the challenges. So we shall have the next session of the Menti at the end of the session. And I will stop the Menti sharing now. So our next session is We are going to hear from the first negotiator, that is Mr. Frederick Ouma. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite him to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Let me see if I can share. Can you share my presentation? So that, yeah, because I realized I can't share it myself. So that comes up. Good afternoon, good morning to all of us who have created time to join this important webinar. My name is Frederick Ouma. I'm the lead negotiator for Kenya on transparency. I'm also with the African Group of Negotiators as a lead coordinator, supporting both transparency and the GST negotiations. So I'll quickly go through my presentation. I'll not be going through slide to slide per se, but I'll just run through it very quickly as I attempt to put into perspective the relevance of the work that we do as climate change negotiators and climate action at the national level. As you may already know, the negotiation process is basically aimed at merging the unique circumstances of the 190 plus countries and coming up with a single policy direction that would accommodate as much as possible all the parties to the Convention on Climate Change. This is why, as one of us has indicated here, it becomes very challenging to get consensus, because all of us negotiate based on our lived experiences, based on our domestic circumstances, based on our internal capacities, among other unique elements that all of us have, or unique circumstances that most of our countries have. As far as transparency is concerned, I mean, it has been quite a journey. You'll realize that anytime we come up with a decision at the UNFCCC level, that decision facilitates a number of internal country-specific movements that are quite critical in terms of tracking progress, in terms of planning, in terms of implementation of climate change actions. And this is the most critical part that transparency plays, because if you're not going to document, report as transparently as possible, then it's difficult to even highlight that something happened. Yet we are supposed to collectively do our part in terms of climate change response. We've moved now from what we would call differentiated reporting, where Annex 1 countries were expected to report a set of elements different with what was expected from non-Annex 1 countries, to what we now consider as a collective approach to reporting. This is one of the, what I would call, some call it an achievement of the Paris Agreement, some call it the burden of the Paris Agreement, like I said, based on our unique circumstances. But it is where we are, where developing countries and developed countries are using the same set of tools and methodologies to communicate their information on climate action and support. Every 2 years through the biennial transparency reports, every 4 years through the national communications, every year through the greenhouse gas inventory, among other different reporting elements, some of which are also voluntary. So as we embark on this journey of the implementation of the Paris Agreement and tracking the nationally determined contributions that all our countries have communicated, or most of the countries have communicated to the Secretariat of the Convention, it is important that at the national level we respond effectively in terms of putting in place the relevant frameworks and systems to be able to provide the required information to facilitate reporting of progress and achievement based on the modalities, procedures, and guidelines as agreed, and also the methodologies that we have negotiated over time to facilitate communication of such information. In terms of how this interfaces with, you can scroll, Sheila, to more or less the last slide. So in terms of how this interfaces with climate action, you will notice that over time, as we negotiate, as we improve the reporting systems, most of our countries have made significant effort. One, in trying to put in place systems that can facilitate development of greenhouse gas inventories. We've had different countries put in place governance frameworks for climate change, including institutional arrangement relevant at the national level to facilitate action or implementation of actions as identified in the different action plannings of the countries, including providing the space and undertaking an analysis on what support would be needed to implement those actions. And these are some of the things we attribute to the work that we do at the UN level whenever we negotiate some of these decisions. Taking a case of Kenya, I think over time, when it comes to action, our Climate Change Act 2016 established a very elaborate institutional arrangement for climate change response in the country that, among other things, mainstreamed climate into all ministries, into all county governments, because we have a devolved governance system, into all agencies, into all departments, basically to ensure that we are getting information from all these different aspects of government, and we're also ensuring that these sectors are planning in a manner that aligns with the low emission climate resilient development pathway. And therefore, in terms of action, the National Climate Change Action Planning process, which is 5-year, is the domestic policy instrument now that is meant to implement the NDC, and that every ministry, county, departments, and agencies are able to implement, track, and communicate reports annually to the Climate Change Directorate for compilation biennially to be submitted throughout our biennial transparency reports. When it comes to finance, for the first time, the government is thinking around reworking our financial management systems to be able to track government expenditure that goes to climate change specific or related issues. We're now having a conversation of how do you tag or code an expenditure in the National Treasury so that we can track expenditures on the unconditional component of our NDC. These are things that were not happening before we negotiated the enhanced transparency framework that provided for the need to track both conditional and unconditional elements of the NDC. We are also discussing how to track climate finance flows that comes from other sources into the country, because we have costed our NDC and we need to be able to track both action and support. So if you look at these efforts and achievements, it's all based on the kind of decisions that we take and the deliberate effort by countries to put in place systems and structures to be able to comply with those decisions, but also to just reorganize government processes in a manner that facilitates transparency and accountability. Finally, in terms of challenges, most countries are still struggling with capacity issues. You will notice that governments are struggling with staffing issues. Anytime you create a department, you need to bring in staff, you need to put systems, furniture, all these things are things that most of our governments are still struggling with due to the the fiscal space that is overstressed as of now. We also get to a point where now, as developing countries, we are now starting to critically look at even the other support that we get from other development partners. Because if you're going to get money from somebody who is going to dictate how that policy or how your NDC is done or how your national climate change action plan is done, you might end up with priorities that don't align with what your national circumstances dictate, but which align with whoever is providing those resources. So these are some of the challenges that some of our countries already anticipate, and of course, addressing them depends significantly on structures like CBIT and the Global Support Program, the JEF, and other mainstream sources of financing for both capacity enhancement and reporting. So I'll stop there for now, Sheila. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the insights that you have given to us. I will be sharing the detailed presentation of what he had prepared. But in case we have any questions or any contributions to what he has presented, we can bring them now, or if we do not have, we can go straight to listen to what Mr. Idris has prepared. I can see Mr. Cham's hand up. Kindly unmute yourself and speak.
Good morning, everyone. I'm from the Gambia. I am Modu Cham, also working in the Climate Change Secretariat of the Ministry of Environment. Thank you very much for the presentation. It is quite useful and very interesting for that matter. For the Gambia, we are working on with issues regarding climate expenditure, budget tagging, and coding, which I feel for that of Kenya, at least, if I can understand in your presentation, you've got some little experience about it. I will need, a very precisely how do you go about it when it comes to this climate expenditure, budget, and coding. We really want to have some little, further understanding with regards to it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cham, for that question. I think it's one of the points for learning. And like I mentioned yesterday, some of these insights can still, because they are still evolving, they can be used as forum discussion topics so that we can learn from other countries, even from the forum. So kindly remember to register on the platform, and we create some of these very interesting topics, both for learning, but also for sharing our experiences. I will not take much of the time. I will allow Frederick maybe to respond and give some insight on what he thinks Cham is asking. Frederick, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Cham. So we started this process, I think. Can you hear me?
I'm getting you.
Sheila, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes,
Cedric,
we can hear you.
Hearing you.
You can hear
Yes, Cedric, you are clear.
Okay, thank you. So I was indicating that we started this process, I think around 2018, when we were negotiating the modalities procedure. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. We can hear you very well. We can hear you very well.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm saying we started this process back around 2018, 2019. We were still negotiating the modalities, procedures, and guidelines for the enhanced transparency framework. And we realized that in order to hold and track climate financing in the national system, we needed to do an overhaul of the our finance management system. And that was going to require a significant amount of money, in upwards of $20 million. So we embarked on a process to see whether we could get some of these resources, and it's until recently that we were to get it's like creating so one of the things that you'll realize, Cham, is that it's other than the fact that it is resource intensive, it requires an entire reorganization of the finance management system that the country in question uses. But it also demands a certain level of time and awareness across different sectors and departments, because then you'll be affecting how resources flow from the national treasury to those particular sectors. So you have to do elaborate awareness, education, and knowledge creation across sectors so that they appreciate the need to track or code climate-specific expenditures, which also means they need to know what is a climate-related or a climate-specific expenditure. What is a climate-related or a climate-specific project? So it requires a lot of capacity building. It requires a lot of engagement of all these relevant departments in the entire process so that they understand the intention, the implication, before you actually proceed and rework on your finance management system. Thank you, Cham.
Yeah, thank you so much for that response. We have another, I would say, question in the chat. They are saying, thank you so much for the presentation. How do you account for loans in your budget tagging for NDC tracking in your national accounting system? I think this question is not only for Frederick. If there's any other country that is also doing it, they can feel free to respond. So we have that question in the chat. If you have any response, it would be good. Yeah, thank you.
I'm not able to see the question on my side. Can you come again, Sheila?
Yeah, so the question is saying, thanks for the presentation. How do you account for the loans in your budget tagging for NDC tracking in your national accounting systems?
Yes, so I mean, this is one of the things that we are going to, is going to be a challenge, because when we were negotiating the methodologies for reporting support provided, mobilized, support needed, and received, one of the challenges that remains up to date is the lack of a common definition of what climate finance really is. So if you look at the Climate Change Act 2016 for Kenya, it defines climate finance as any resource other than loans. So it basically indicates that any loan received will not be accounted as climate finance, because then the country will still have to repay it back. But if you look at the general definition of or the working definitions that are applied, whether it's the World Bank definition, whether it's the UNFCCC agreed understanding of what climate finance is, even before we get a working definition. It's about anything, whether it is loans, concessional loans, grants, insurance, all these things are counted as climate finance as long as they flow to implement climate-specific or climate-related projects. So at the moment, our internal laws only allows us to account for grants as climate finance. But that definitely is very different with other countries. The countries that will account for concessional loans, we have a number of projects that are implementing, climate-specific or climate-related issues or projects that are climate-specific or climate-related, funded by the World Bank, for example, through concessional loans. If we use our working definition, we are not going to report them as climate finance. We'll report them as development finance. But if that evolves, if we get to a point where the Standing Committee on Finance are able to negotiate and get us a working definition of climate finance, then that might change as we progress. So at the moment, this is unique. It's from country to country, which we are going to struggle with when it comes to comparative analysis of what a developed country communicates as provided to Kenya and what Kenya reports back as received. Because then the provider uses their own working definition of climate finance. The recipient will also use its own working definition of climate finance to report what it actually received. So that is an anticipated challenge that can only be cured if we finally get to a place where we can have a working definition of climate finance under the UNFCCC process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frederick. I can see a hand up. Kindly unmute yourself and speak. Yes, Irene.
Wow. Hello, Sheila. Can you hear me? I've been having an internet breakdown. Like, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sheila, for giving me the opportunity. And thanks a lot to Frederick for giving us that very good, brief presentation that is so informative. Frederick, just to get your thoughts and maybe from others. So we realize that as we do the transparency reporting, we realize that I don't know whether it's only Uganda, but maybe most of the LDC countries, there is a lot of money that is much more attached to TAs than actually the actual activity implementation at the country level. I find that a little bit challenging. And I don't know what you think that we as LDCs, for example, how do we say handle these kind of cases? What can we do to have maybe the other way around, like less TAs and more activity implementation at the country level? Just pick your thoughts on that. Is there any guidance just based on your experience in this? Thank you.
Yes, Frederick and other negotiators in the room, kindly feel free to respond to some of those questions. Today's topic, of course, it's about climate change negotiations and reflections on what it means for Africa, and that's why you see some of those questions that have been pending at individual level are coming out so strongly in this webinar. So if anyone has an insight on what they feel, it would be very important that we don't give all the questions to Frederick. We have other negotiators here in the webinar. So, but in the meantime, Frederick, you can respond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Irene. I completely agree with you. But the problem is twofold. So the first problem is that most developing countries have indicated that one of the challenges we have is internal capacity. And we have also indicated that the mainstream sources of financing for readiness and for capacity development are not adequate for the needed, for the capacity gaps or the institutional gaps that we have as developing countries to be able to comply with the different provisions and the different decisions that have been taken around the enhanced transparency framework. So what you get at the end is many agencies that then access a number of a significant amount of resources, either from their governments or from other foundations, to basically address that gap. You'll notice that there are countries where you wouldn't even get some sort of institutional arrangement on climate change. You won't get, for example, a department. All you will get is possibly a desk officer. So many organizations have used those gaps to mobilize resources to be able to respond to those capacity gaps in developing countries, especially in LDCs and seeds. So what we then end up with is a lot of organizations coming in, some more or less doing the same thing. Before you complete one project, another project arrives, more or less doing the same thing. You shelve what you were doing before you complete that other one, another project arrives. So it has created some sort of confusion in our countries. And has also, ignored where resources are much needed, which is the actual implementation of actions that would actually lead to improved lives and livelihoods of our people. The other side of it.
Why can't you just stand it as a single document and then send?
Someone is speaking, eh? So that is the one aspect of it. So the aspect of it is also basically the lack of prioritization within our own countries and channeling resources where they are most needed. So you'll notice that without proper climate action planning and prioritization, putting in place the relevant structures, it's very difficult to get resources that implement actions that are climate specific or climate related, because you can't really isolate what is climate and what is development. In a developing country scenario, an agriculture project can either be a development project or a climate change project. The only difference is in the objective of the project. Was the objective articulate in indicating that this is a climate specific project, or it was designed as a development project? Because all our sectors are facilitating both development and the climate change response. So that the failure to tease out what is climate related and climate specific puts us in a situation where almost everything that we do is development, but then when it comes to accounting everything, everyone wants to account everything as climate because it's still an energy project that used renewable energy. It's still an agriculture project that was climate smart and all this kind of issues. So it's something that can only be addressed if, one, we organize ourselves a little bit better, and we learn to also say no. That yes, you've come with money for TA, but you already have Agency A doing more or less what you want to do. Can you complement what Agency A is doing? But also deliberately working internally to create the relevant institutional arrangement, the policy and legal frameworks required, so that we're able to do climate-specific action planning that will then give you priority areas for implementation to be able to benefit from some of the resources that are available for action, for climate action. Somebody else can jump in to add. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really very elaborate, and I think it touched on some of the questions that are already in the chat. I think we shall come back to those questions later about the difference between climate finance and finance for development. At this moment, I would like to invite our next speaker, negotiator for Africa. That is Mr. Idris Yamikani. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, dear colleagues. Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks. Let me recognize my
yes, you can hear.
distinguished speakers who have already spoken, Ketwe, as well as Fred and others. I'm really thrilled to be with you here today, and I know we are all experts, and we are just sharing insights. So at this point in time, I would like to invite Shira to share the presentation, because just a practice to have a presentation, but I have just spoken through as a lot of things have already been talked about by my colleagues like Fred, and thank you for preempting my presentation, Fred. I think a lot of things is what you have just already said, and that's why we are already at the end there. Yeah, so I'll just share some few insights on the perspective of climate change negotiations in recognizing policy aspirations and strategies towards the enhanced transparency framework in Africa. As I mentioned, my name is Yamikani Idris. I'm a climate change negotiator for Malawi, specifically on transparency as well, and also global stock tech. And I'm also part of the African Group of Negotiators, and I'm the lead transparency negotiator for the LDCs. So in African perspective, first let me mention that we consider enhanced transparency framework as not only a technical requirement, but it's also a moral imperative, as we are all aware that we are so vulnerable to climate change. We have the special circumstances of us Africans. We are low emitters, and indeed we need to make sure that we hold our colleagues accountable, and it's only through enhanced transparency framework where we'll be able indeed to understand the emissions which our colleagues are producing, and also not only the emissions, but also the support which is coming to our countries for us to build the resilience. So it's indeed not just a technical requirement to emphasize. And my colleague Fred has already highlighted some of those key aspects of reporting under the ETF. So as we strive to curtail the greenhouse gas emissions and limit the global warming, it is so important that the transparency mechanisms which we are setting on are ensured so that we have the accurate reporting and effective monitoring of all our actions. And for Africa, I think the only hope we have is the Paris Agreement, and we have to make sure that we put all the measures to track if indeed we are limiting the global warming according to the goal of the Paris Agreement. So through the transparency approach, we should consider the diverse circumstances and capacities of African countries. Indeed, that has been articulated that most of our countries, we don't have enough capacity to report. And we can say we can blame ourselves as negotiators because we really put ourselves at the corner, since most of the reporting requirements which we have, they really favor the capacity which is existing in our colleagues. But our aim was that, yes, we are at the middle of the things, because at the same time, we need strong reporting for us to understand the emissions and the support. But at the same time, we don't have the capacity for ourselves to really meet the reporting requirements. So our hope is that through the negotiations which are ongoing, our special circumstances and low capacities of African countries will be considered. And at the same time, we'll be taking into account historical emissions of the developed countries, the current development needs of African countries, and the technology transfer and capacity building. So when we are designing as well as negotiating the transparency, the technology transfer and capacity building, for us Africans, it's a key consideration. And we have been talking about currently the need for systems. As we have heard, we need systems to track the climate finance. We need systems to track the emissions. We need systems and technology to track actually our own NDCs. So we need that technology as well as the capacity building to be emphasized, because the importance of enhanced transparency framework cannot be overemphasized. Next slide. Yeah, so in continuity, we are looking at the transparency to be inclusive, fostering collaboration between government, civil society, and the private sector. So as mentioned, without strong collaboration between actors, I think it will not work. It will not get us anywhere. We have several initiatives, several institutions coming in to provide support. But without collaboration, I think that will just be in piecemeals and it might not provide the much needed agent support for us to adequately report. So we need that inclusivity and collaboration among the governments, the civil society, and the private sector. And these platforms, for example, through the Global Support Program, it's good that we have several actors coming together, including us from the governments and also the civil society and so on. So we need those platforms to continue and make sure that we collaboratively bring together all the necessary initiatives. Another important is that in Africa, the journey towards ETF must make sure that African nations must not walk alone. So we should not be in isolation, and we should not work in a way that we don't have the support. So our colleagues from the developed countries must honor their commitment to provide that financial assistance and technology transfer and capacity building. And that's what we have been emphasizing, that the support is needed, and this support should be adequate, self-determined as for us African countries, as well as we have to be leading our own capacity building needs. So we have to make sure that we know what we need and have strategic support on, towards that. And this leadership should be in the form of empowering African countries to effectively implement the transparency measures and contribute meaningfully to the global climate goals. So at the end of all this is how all of us collectively are we going to achieve the global climate goals. And this indeed needs to leave no one behind, as important as it is. So that was how we look at the perspectives of African countries towards the enhanced transparency framework in relation to our own policies and strategies. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm here for any question and comments available. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that really perspective for Africa, and also you articulated very well what Africa needs, how they need to be prepared, how we need to work together. And I think that was really very informative, from the negotiation to policy and to action. So I will give the floor to members here in the meeting to be able to give their insights, also their perception. I know most of them here in this meeting are experts, and we are able to move together to see how the negotiations can support enhanced transparency. So the floor is open. I can see a hand up from Mr. Cham. Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikali, for the presentation. It is quite interesting, much especially when you talk about collaboration between the sectors, the tri-sector, the government, the civil society organization, NGOs, and the private sector. It's just like in the case of the Gambia, we have so many organizations, the private sector, government that are involved in climate change. It is important that we have a better collaboration as far as this thing is concerned, both at national and regional level. But I will just want to ask, Yami, in their case in Malawi, because whether this one is just a proposal or they are on the course to provide, a better collaboration as far as Malawi experience is concerned. If that is the case, I will just want him to share. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I will also read this contribution before Mr. Yamikani responds to that. I can see Mr. Muhammad Semamo is saying the transparency framework will be effective only when African countries have developed and if we are able to use our national specific emission factors in accounting for GHG emissions and reporting, rather than the global default values of emission factors. So I think that is a contribution to the discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Semamo Muhammad. And Mr. Yamikani, kindly go ahead and respond to what Mr. Cham was asking.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Mr. Cham was making comments and agreeing to what I've said, and I totally agree with that need at country level to emphasize that close collaboration among institutions. So you are really right, Mr. Cham, and your country indeed, you are doing well to really emphasize on the need to collaboratively work together, and this provides a lot of opportunities. For instance, in terms of the resources, I think the resources, once they're brought together, they provide that synergy among several actors and initiatives, so that at the end we have meaningful institutional strengthening arrangements as well as systems are in place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. The floor is open. I know most of us here in this meeting have participated in negotiations, and of course from the Mentimeter, I saw that it was trying to bring out the challenges. You can also bring them out here to see how can even those challenges help to enhance the reflections on how we can do better in terms of improving our transparency reporting. So kindly just know the floor is open. But there was a question or a discussion, of course, it's about climate finance and development finance. If anyone has an insight on what Mr. Wills was asking, and also Uma, please, the floor is open. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Yamikani, it's okay, you can speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think in the negotiations aspect, we are trying our best to make sure that there is a difference between the climate finance and the finance which is available for development. And this is what, at African perspective, we are trying hard to make sure that we have a good definition of climate finance. Because it's only when we have that definition, it's when we can really push for realization of the responsibility which our colleagues have related to climate change. Because the climate change is solely caused by their emissions, which they caused, and they have the historic responsibility to provide now means of implementation of all the obligations under the convention as well as the Paris Agreement. So we really have to try our best to differentiate that so that the resources which are provided for development are different from the resources for responding to the adverse impacts of climate change which we are facing. As of now, we have the issue of adaptation. We need the doubling of climate finance. So adaptation on its own is different from the resources which they can provide for development. For example, on education, for example, they want to support education and they provide resources for you to construct schools and so on. So the development and climate response, in terms of the finance aspect, we are supposed to try our best to differentiate. And now we have the loss and damage fund, and that is so there's quite a lot of overlap between the
I think Mr. Yamikani is having some internet challenges. I cannot hear him now. Can you hear me? Because I cannot hear Mr. Yamikani. Yeah, we lost him.
I can hear you, Sheila.
Hear Yamikani, but we can't
Yes,
hear you.
yes. I think
Yamikani,
we lost
maybe you can mute your or switch off your camera.
Maybe switch off the camera.
Hello. Hello, maybe Fred, you can go on because we lost Mr. Yamikani. Frederick, you can go on.
Yeah, I think as he explained, there is a very big difference between development financing and climate financing, and we have always indicated. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you clear, loud and clear. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Sheila?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
I can
good.
hear you. Yes.
So just from where Yamikani left, now that we are also going to have I can't hear you, Sheila. What you're saying?
For me, I can hear you, so kindly go on. I can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear you. So kindly go on.
Hello, Sheila. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I'm saying just where Yamikani left it, there is a distinction between development finance and climate finance. Development finance, as has originally been, remains development finance, which means country A getting resources purely for development purposes, sometimes in loans which they repay through the FDB, World Bank, or whichever IMF or whichever development agency or MDB they are working with. Climate finance is very, very specific in its objective. So a case study is if Kenya, for example, had a development project, an infrastructure development project for a road, development of a road, and then because our NDC indicates that we need to reduce emissions in our transport sector, or we need to accommodate what we call we need to climate proof the development project. We say because this project was initially $100 million, we will need an additional $5 million to climate proof the road, which means creating non-motorized transport lanes, walking lanes, cycling lanes, planting, for example, trees along the road, those different elements. So that additional amount that you get to climate proof a development project then becomes the climate specific financing of that project. So you cannot say the entire, because a road is built and it has all these things, then the entire amount of money is climate finance. Neither can you say it is fully development finance, unless it didn't indicate in the original design of the road that we will be seeking the extra amount of money as from a climate finance source, that this is just the design of the road as a development project, then you won't have a climate component of it. So it is more or less on the objective of the project, and has a lot to do with the deliberate effort to indicate that this project is climate related and is climate specific. That is where, when you'll get money from, for example, a climate fund or a climate resilience kitty in IMF or in the World Bank, for example, for the agencies that have such kitties. So it is very different. And now that loss and damage is also coming, we need to move with speed so that we have a common understanding of what that climate finance is, which is still subject to debate. And when we get the loss and damage finance, then we should also be able to understand what is loss and damage finance, because it is only other than that you'll be able to account for what you have received as climate financing, so that if France reports $10 as resources provided to Kenya for climate finance, Kenya should be able to report $10 minus administrative, for example, charges that remain in France as what it has received, because we are working with a common definition of what climate finance is. So they're quite different, and we need to, it's a process that is going to, the gap is going to be very visible after the first reports in 2024, because every country will report the support section based on their own definition of climate finance, and we will be struggling with how to synthesize that information with all the different definitions, assumptions, and methodologies applied by different countries as far as information on support is concerned. I hope that is elaborate enough.
Yes, yes, that is a very perfect. It's extremely elaborate, and I think it links very well with the negotiation group. And I think there's still a lot of work for you to reflect on what it can mean for Africa and also in relation to transparency reporting. So I think this discussion is very well linked, and you have provided an elaborate, really explanation on the differences and insights on what you think can be done. So we have Mr. Yamikani back. If he can maybe complete his submission, that would be nice.
Yeah,
We have
thank you.
decided that we could remove the video so that we have a good connection. If you don't mind, you can also remove the video.
Yes, thank you. I don't have to complete. I think Fred has completed very well. So thank you very much. But just add in terms of the tables which we were designing under the ETF, I think we tried also our best to make sure that the tables provide more details on type of finance and so on, so that it's really purely climate, so that we do not confuse with the other finances. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I can see Mr. Semambo wants to say something. Mohammed Semambo, you can unmute yourself and you say something.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. I don't know if you can hear me well, but I just wanted also to contribute. Just wanted also to contribute to the definition for climate change financing. And I think the interpretation here is in two ways. One, there are those development projects that have been designed, and what you need to do is actually to climate proof them against the risk of climate change. So that additional cost that you incur into a development project, like infrastructure project, could be termed as to be the climate change finance that are inserted into the development project to climate proof the investment in that project. But on the other hand, there are other projects that are designed under GCF, the projects that are designed under maybe Adaptation Fund and among other funders, and they are really purely on the new designing arrangement, and the totality of that project, you could also consider it as climate change finance, because the project objective there is really to build resilience or do mitigation. And the idea of designing that project is totally really in the lens of addressing the national climate change policies and strategies. So that one can also be climate change financing, but in the absolute design, you are looking at the national policies that are really trying to implement and design a project. So just given an example, some could be money which are put into capacity building, like a workshop and all that kind. They sometimes also they are counted to be climate change financing, but they are going into the aspect of enhancing capacity. So that's why I say that sometimes it is case by case, but we look at those additional costs in case the project is existing or designed separately and you want to target climate change, or it is purely a new project which is being designed to implement the national policies. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that contribution to the discussion. I think it gives a good understanding of what negotiators should really consider, the different understanding and where the countries are coming from and the stage at which they are in building these ideas to support transparency reporting. So without going into other details, I would like to know if we have any other contributions. I can see a hand up. Yes, Kisiwe, kindly speak. Unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and thank you to the colleagues for a very interesting discussion that we are having here, and to Yamikani and Frederick for just giving us a glimpse and reflections on the latest climate change negotiations. I just want to pick a few things that the colleagues talked about as we reflect on the importance of transparency. I think it came out very clear that the enhanced transparency framework is actually bringing us together both the developed and developing countries. And we are expected to already catch up, because developed countries, we know that they have been actually doing this over time under the convention. And so we already here at a disadvantage in terms of the capacities for developing countries, especially African countries. And I think one other key important thing that they brought into core is that how do countries put in place the systems and the technology that is required for us to be able to meet the demands of the enhanced transparency framework. And I think my colleague Yamgani highlighted and talked strongly about the issue of self-determined needs, which is supposed to come from us as different countries in terms of what is it that, what kind of support we need, and what are the key challenges that we are having in our countries, and how do we want to chart our way moving forward and ensure that we are responding to the enhanced transparency framework as it were. And also one of the key issues he talked about is collaboration, having strong partnership, working together from the agency side, the countries, private sector, academia, and all relevant stakeholders. And I just want to bring all this together in terms of saying that the CBIT Global Support Program is here for you to actually ensure that we actually respond to each and all of these different issues that we have talked about here today. I think yesterday we were actually introducing the Climate Transparency Platform, which is one of the key, I think, signature outputs from this project, where we are actually looking at creating a space for peer learning and experience sharing. Please do visit this platform, and please do keep the platform alive, and also give us feedback in terms of how you want to see this platform actually responding to your needs. So it's very important that you take a responsibility in actually informing us how you want to see this platform going forward. And this is where collaboration comes in. Let us collaborate together and actually work around improving the platform and making sure that the platform is serving our needs. I think in terms of self-determining this needs that you want, or you want us to respond to, please do reach out to the CBIT team with the needs that you want, especially when it comes to capacity building or support in terms of how you actually develop roadmaps to the BTR. I think already we are late for developing roadmaps, which will be already starting to working on our BTRs. And encourage you to actually already start thinking long-term in terms of sustainabilities of these capacities, because we know this one-off capacities sometimes is not really helpful. How do we build in sustainable, or how do we sustain the capacities in our countries? So issues of institutional systems come into play. So think about all this and let us know in terms of how we can support you and how we can ensure that we all move together and we are actually building the capacities in our countries to ensure that we are responding to the needs and making sure that this transparency is working for us. It's not just for putting reports out there, but ensuring that we are also mutually benefiting throughout the process. So this is what I wanted to say from my side as countries reflect on these issues, that the global support, the CBIT Global Support Project is here for you to support you. Whatever that you may need, we can discuss and chart a way forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Kisiwe, and the reflections on what she has pointed out about the platform. The platform is for you. On the platform, you'll also find a link where you can download a form to request for support. We are always open. If you get any challenges, you can always reach out to us to support you. But in terms of support, there are some countries that have not actually submitted their support. It could be just even a simple support in terms of understanding some of the elements that need to be integrated in enhanced transparency reporting. Reach out to us. We are always there to support that process. So for those who have not yet registered to the platform, kindly register. We shall be on the standby to approve your registration so that you can be able to interactively use the platform. And I would like to take this opportunity, if we do not have any other contribution, to go to the last part of this webinar. And I wanted to run the last questions of the webinar. If we do not have any other contribution, you will allow me to share the Mentimeter questions, which is already here with you. How satisfied are you with this webinar? I would like to get your feel on how satisfied you are so that we are able to design these webinars better in future. So your response is very important. And I will still copy the link, but it's the same link that you had used before. So it's in the chat. You can use the link, but also you can use the code that is on the screen. That is 26105543. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm not seeing anyone here giving us their feedback on this question, which is very important for us to know how you are satisfied. Thank you so much for those who have been able to enter the Menti. I can see we have responses now. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And of course, our last question is, yeah, you can continue filling the Menti. Our last question is about how, are there other areas you would like to learn more about in future? I think that is very interesting. For some of the areas that you mentioned here, we shall put them under our discussion forum at our platform so that we are able to continue exchanging ideas and seeing how we can together improve our transparency reporting. Kindly give us your views on what discussion topics, on what webinars you would want to see, which we can discuss together in future. So thank you so much. We still have some time. You can continue filling the Menti. Yes, yeah. So I can see a need here, developing indicators for NDC. Yes, this can be a topic for discussion, but it can also be part of the request. If a country needs some of this support, you can always reach out to us and we see how we can support this, provide this capacity for, like, for instance, supporting development of indicators for NDC tracking. Yeah, we can always support some of those needs. Yes, tracking adaptation actions. So kindly reach out to us. Of course, here in the Menti, we can't know which country, so it would be nice you reach out to us and then we can see how we can support some of those processes to enhance transparency reporting. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all of you, the negotiators, and we hope to have more insightful webinars in future. Yes, I would like to say bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.